What if I told you Smilodon survived every predator except time? Look at this cold wind moving across the late Ice Age grasslands, where the frost recedes, the ground softens, and familiar paths no longer feel the same. But somewhere in this changing landscape, the saber-toothed tiger walks forward, unaware that the world it depends on is already slipping away. This could be the story of its last day. A world built for predators. Before humans recorded history, the Ice Age had its own rulers, and among them was the saber-toothed tiger. It was a hunter shaped by extreme precision, refined over thousands of years to dominate a world filled with giants. The saber-toothed tiger was not an oversized cat or a reckless brute. It was a carefully refined predator, designed for a specific environment and a specific type of prey. Although shorter than a modern lion, it was far more heavily built, with massive forelimbs designed to overpower struggling prey rather than chase it across open ground. Its jaws opened wider than those of any living big cat, allowing it to deliver a killing bite unlike anything seen today. Its defining feature, the long curved canines that could reach up to 20 centimeters in length, were not meant for crushing bone or tearing flesh indiscriminately. These teeth were precision weapons, evolved to deliver deep targeted wounds to vulnerable areas such as the throat or belly. Smilodon did not rely on endurance or speed. It relied on surprise, strength, and accuracy. And for thousands of years, this strategy worked because the world around it provided exactly what it needed. The Land of Giants. The saber-toothed tiger did not survive by hunting small animals, but by targeting the giants of the Ice Age. Mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, and ancient bison formed the foundation of its ecosystem, moving slowly across vast open plains in massive herds. These enormous animals shaped Smilodon's evolution, favoring raw power over speed and short, explosive attacks over prolonged pursuit. As long as these giants dominated the landscape, Smilodon remained one of the most efficient predators on Earth. However, a predator built entirely around large prey becomes vulnerable when those giants begin to disappear, and that question would ultimately determine Smilodon's fate. What happens to a predator when the animals it depends on begin to disappear? The world begins to change. The end of the Ice Age did not arrive suddenly, but unfolded slowly over centuries as temperatures rose, glaciers retreated, and rainfall patterns shifted across the continents. Open grasslands gradually transformed into forests and wetlands, breaking apart the wide hunting grounds Smilodon depended on. To the planet, these changes were natural and gradual, but to Smilodon, they were catastrophic. Migration routes fractured, prey became scattered, and the large herds that once provided reliable hunting opportunities dwindled or vanished entirely. Smilodon was not built for adaptability, as its body and hunting style were optimized for a world that no longer existed. When prey became unpredictable and harder to ambush, even a perfectly designed predator began to struggle. The disappearing prey. As the climate warmed, Ice Age megafauna declined under growing environmental pressure. Some species failed to adapt to shrinking habitats, others were pushed into isolated regions, and many suffered population losses faster than they could recover. For Smilodon, every disappearing herd reduced its chances of survival, and every failed hunt drained precious energy that could not easily be replaced. A predator can endure scarcity for a time, but repeated failure eventually leads to exhaustion, starvation, and collapse. The question was no longer whether Smilodon was an effective hunter, but how long it could endure in a world that no longer fed it. The other predator arrives. As the environment shifted, another predator expanded across the landscape, one that did not rely on strength or speed alone, but on cooperation and intelligence. Early humans did not confront Smilodon directly. nor did they need to, as their hunting methods allowed them to exploit the same prey more efficiently. Humans hunted in groups, control-led fire, and learned migration patterns, often targeting the same large animals Smilodon depended on. They could drive herds toward traps, isolate weakened individuals, and return repeatedly to known hunting grounds. Wherever humans settled, populations of megafauna often declined soon after, reducing the food available to other predators. It is unlikely that humans alone caused Smilodon's extinction, but combined with climate stress and prey loss, their presence tipped an already fragile balance. Unlike Smilodon, humans adapted rapidly, changing tools, strategies, and prey choices as conditions demanded. A body built for a lost world. Smilodon's anatomy reveals how specialization can become a weakness when conditions change. Its saber-like canines were lethal but fragile, and a single broken tooth could mean death by starvation. Its massive forelimbs were ideal for wrestling large prey, pinning struggling bodies to the ground, but inefficient when hunting smaller, faster animals that required endurance or agility. Modern big cats survive because they can adapt to a wide range of prey, switching strategies as landscapes shift, but Smilodon could not. Its body was perfected for a narrow role in a stable ecosystem, leaving little margin for error. And when survival depends on perfection, what happens when the world demands flexibility instead? The Last Strongholds. Like many Ice Age animals, Smilodon did not disappear everywhere at once, as small populations lingered in regions where prey remained abundant and environmental change was slower. These isolated groups survived longer, but isolation carried its own dangers. Reduced genetic diversity increased vulnerability to disease, injury, and environmental stress, meaning that even a single harsh winter or failed breeding season could wipe out an entire population. In these final refugees, the world felt quieter, herds were smaller, hunts took longer, familiar paths led to fewer rewards. Each generation was born into a landscape that offered just enough to survive, but never enough to recover. While the final saber-toothed tiger continued its routine like countless generations, before hunting, resting, and searching for food, guided by instincts that had once guaranteed survival. It had no awareness that it was alone, no understanding that there would be no offspring to follow its tracks, and no signal that the lineage it carried was about to end. The extinction did not announce itself. It simply arrived when one life ended without another to replace it. No final moment. There was no dramatic ending to mark Smilodon's extinction, no single event that announced its disappearance to the world around it. Instead, hunger, isolation, and mounting environmental pressure quietly narrowed its options until survival itself became impossible. The final generations lived in landscapes that no longer matched their instincts, hunting routes that no longer led to abundance, and seasons that no longer followed familiar rhythms. Each year demanded more effort for less reward, until the margin between life and death vanished entirely. The last Smilodon did not die as a ruler of its world, but as a survivor who endured until there was nothing left to endure, carrying an anatomy built for a vanished ecosystem into a future that had no place for it. What remains? Today, Smilodon survives only through fossils preserved in tar pits, caves, and ancient sediments, where massive forelimbs and perfectly formed saber teeth offer silent testimony to a life once defined by power and precision. These remains tell stories that go far beyond appearance, as fractured bones reveal injuries healed over time, suggesting long periods of survival despite severe trauma. Worn teeth show repeated use, while bite marks on prey fossils reveal how Smilodon hunted and where it struck. Through these discoveries, scientists reconstruct not only its diet and behavior, but also its struggles, revealing an animal that lived hard, endured pain, and survived in a demanding world until the balance finally tipped against it. Smilodon did not disappear because it was weak or inferior, but because the world it evolved for vanished faster than it could change. Its extinction was not a failure of strength, but a consequence of dependence on a fragile ecological balance. That same pattern repeats today, as specialized species struggle against rapid environmental shifts driven by climate change, habitat loss, and human expansion. Animals perfectly adapted to specific conditions often suffer first when those conditions disappear, no matter how dominant they once were. The saber-toothed tiger is not simply a relic of the past, but a reminder that power alone does not guarantee survival, and that even the most formidable animals are vulnerable when the balance of their world is lost. The absence of Smilodon reshaped ecosystems forever and left a lesson written in stone and bone. This story proves that even supreme predator that once dominated can disappear. And what if we, too, vanished faster than we could ever adapt? As we look at the animals living today on the edge of environmental change, one question remains unavoidable. Which species are already walking through their own final days without even realizing it? If this story made you see the Smilodon with different eyes, stay with me on this journey.